Hello, and thank you for joining us for Autodesk's latest webinar with Car Design News. My name is Ewan Say. I'm the editor of Interior Motives magazine and the associate editor of Car Design News. As you know, this webinar will focus on VRED Professional for high-end image production. Over the next half hour or so, we'll be joined by Autodesk's Lucas Fett as he shows us how to use the company's 2014 package within a linear workflow to create impressive imagery that needs little post-production work. Lucas joined the PIVR consulting and visualization team 2 years ago. After graduating in digital media, he was involved in the visual and conceptual development of VRED. As a 3D artist, he created marketing imagery and tested VRED technology to guide future development. Lucas is responsible for quality assurance, support and consulting, and is a professional VRED trainer for the automotive industry and CGI agencies. If any questions pop into your mind while you're listening to Lucas's presentation, please do feel free to type them into the box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Lucas will then do his best to answer as many of them as possible during the question and answer session that follows. If you experience any technical issues at all during the session, please use the same box at the bottom of your screen to detail the problem, and we'll do our very best to solve it as quickly as possible. Okay, it's time to pass you over to your host for this week's webinar, Lucas Fett. Over to you, Lucas.
Okay, thank you. So, welcome everybody to my presentation about using VRED for high-end image production. Just to give you a short overview, as I was introduced, very good. I will skip this one and just go on. Just to talk about the preparation pipeline, I will start doing some shading. Afterwards, I will add some animation to a pre-configured theme that I'm using. Then we will do a little bit of lighting and put some, or I will explain the basic concepts of VRED. Then we'll talk about some camera features. We will set up some render settings and render layers. And finally, we will hopefully render out 3 mind-blowing pictures. So I will start with a short PowerPoint presentation and then go over using VRED in the workflow, as I just mentioned. So just to tell you some facts about shading, we are using true light materials, which are basically VRED shaders. We have a real-world concept for materials, which is quite good and easy to use, because you don't need to decide whether to take a Phong shader or something. We already built in materials which are existing in real world, like plastic, brushed metal, and stuff like this, to make it easier for you to decide which material you should use on which purpose. We furthermore have special materials like measured materials, which are based on BTF files. And just to point one of them out, skylight material, which can be used as for lighting the scene in different within a specific time and place on Earth. You can just kind of simulate it. Just for animation, we have a curve editor and a clip maker, which is basically a linear animation tool and a non-linear animation tool. We will talk, or we are going to see the curve editor in a minute. So I will talk about this later on. And what is kind of unique or special to VRED, you're able to import vertex animation like Maya caches, which is quite a good feature to enhance your animation. Lighting, yeah, basically we have 3 types of lights: direct, area, and object lights. Furthermore, VRED is able to use the technology of photon tracing for indirect illumination and generating caustics. And we have a connection to HDR Light Studio, which makes it very easy to build your own HDR images into your scene And like you could also light paint on your car using this plugin. Just a few information about the camera system. We have real camera parameters, which means if you are a professional photographer, it shouldn't be a problem for you to use VRED's camera module. Also, we are providing motion blur and depth of field, which I will show during the live demo of VRED. And we have a very powerful post-processing tool inside of VRED, which I will use during the live presentation as well, just to show you that you can, or you are able to finish your high-end pictures within VRED without using an additional post-processing program like Photoshop or something. So just to talk about the render passes and render layers very quickly, you will later on see how it works. We have a lot of different channels. You can see them in real time or also live in the software, as well as render them out offline, from material channel, illumination channels to auxiliary channels. It's quite cool to figure out problems during rendering, so you can use the live channels to see which part has to be calculated a little bit more and where to improve your render settings. But we will also take a look at this later on. And finally, that's it for my PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully we will get a cool rendering afterwards. So I will switch to using VRED. As you can see, I'm using a hot rod for this webinar, just to give him a few seconds to render. You can see that he's refining the picture. I'm going to start with setting up the HDR, so let me just switch off anti-aliasing. So basically, I've prepared a sphere environment material and just put in an HDR image. I will just use it or take it and drag and drop it onto the sky dome. So basically what I have to do is just to set up the projection center. In this case, I know that the picture was taken in 1.5 meters. So I will just put in a 1,500 because it is in millimeters into the center C, and you can see that the projection looks quite good. So the additional thing I have to do is just to adapt the geometry a little bit to the projection. So I will just scale it in 2 directions, like this. And you can, at the moment it looks quite strange, but when we go inside and closer to the car, you will see that the result is quite good. So the only thing left is apply it to the materials. I will just do it by right-clicking on the sphere environment. Now the reflections are okay. Just for your information, at the moment I'm using pre-computed plus shadow render or illumination mode, which is not the best mode, so I will switch it shortly before we are starting to render the final pictures. So what I basically want to do, I have an idea of a picture that I want to take, and I will just like get or show you the steps how to get there. Of course, a lot of stuff is prepared because we have a limited amount of time in this webinar, so it is pre-shaded or the materials are already applied. I will just switch some materials. So as you can see on the right side in the material editor, I have the opportunity to switch between some car paints that I pre-configured. So I will use the black one, but let's take the unicolor black. As you can see, by double-clicking on the materials, I can just switch them. So I've decided to take this one, and I want to turn on the light. That's one of, I'll just take a look inside of the material, and you can see that it is like, it has values on the incandescence channel, so it is emitting light into the scene. and VRED calculates, or like it is basically an object light using the geometry provided by the model. So after turning on the lights and switching the car paint, we have to make sure that the animation is already there. So basically I will just go to the curves editor, which I mentioned during the PowerPoint presentation, and open it up. And you can see that the 4 wheels are already animated. They're kind of rotating, but the car is not driving at the moment, so I will just animate the environment material to also get this effect, because actually I want to render a motion blur picture at the end of the webinar, so we need to get this effect also on the background. So basically I'm just animating center X. So I've selected the environment material. You can see the attributes up here. I will go to center X and key the selected attribute onto keyframe 0, and then move the slider to keyframe 12. Put in 6,000, which means 6 meters, and key it again. You can see that the curve is popping up. Of course, you can adjust your keyframe tangents within this editor, but as we just want to render one image, we don't need to have an ease in and ease out or some kind of acceleration. So I will just go to frame 6 to have the motion within the picture for motion blur, for example. But the first thing I want to do is to render a depth of field picture just on the fly. Give them some seconds to calculate it to show you how fast VRED is calculating images. So basically I have to switch to the camera editor, select the camera that is activated at the moment, and then just check the box in front of depth of field. You can see that the f-stop presets are popping up. So it is related to real cameras. I will just define the focus distance, which is in my case like somewhere here. Therefore you just need to double click that. So after double clicking, you can see that the value is changing over here, and I think the f-stop of 1.8 should be quite good. So I will just start rendering to see how the result looks like. Maybe we should like change the perspective a little bit, like this, and choose the focus distance again. And you can see that the background and the back part of the car gets blurred during render process. The front will stay sharp and crisp, as you would expect it. So that's basically the easiest way to just render a quick depth of field image. I will go on, of course, because we want to render motion blur, want to add motion blur 2 to the picture. So let me just add an additional functionality or feature of the camera and enable the motion blur. Therefore, I will stop the calculation, maybe give him a few seconds more for you to be able to see the result. So of course I didn't exaggerate the effect, because otherwise it will look like a toy car or something. So just a slight blur on the back of the car. So I will switch off the rendering and activate motion blur. So you can see that there is a shutter speed. I will just double check if the shutter speed is set on the right value. So start rendering and just take a look at the wheels and just decide if it is okay for your case or not. So in my case it is quite good. Just looks quite fast. So just to double check it. So basically the setup for the motion blur effect is already done. We will just put some post effects onto the picture because, as I said, I don't want to like use an additional software to produce this picture. I will use all the features we have in VRED to add features or like. Okay, so I just switched between camera settings and image processing, which is the next part I will use to produce the picture. I will turn on the blending, which is basically a vignette as you know it from Photoshop or something else. Very slight effect, so I will just change the values a little bit. So let us put 0.6 there, a radius 5 or something, 0.5, and something like 0.2 there. So we have kind of a slight vignette effect on the picture. Of course, this is just like 2D stuff. It is not affecting your 3D scene, so you can see it like very quickly changes and stuff. So the blending should be quite good. Actually, I can like redefine it later on, so I will just go on like adding some glow and glare. So let me just enable the glow, and as you can see, as soon as I enable it, you see the effect on the scene already. Of course, that's a little bit like too intense, so I will reduce the size from 1.0 to 0.3 or something, just to get a less intense effect, and this should be quite okay. So as I said, I will like change it again on the fly during the render process, activate the glare, and also 0.3 or something, and also the intensity should be reduced because I just want to have a slight effect. Because these effects are not volumetric but 2D, that's why I don't want to exaggerate.
Off his presentation. So please bear with us while we find Lucas and sort out this problem.
Of course, Everything else, the settings like purpose, so I didn't change too much here, just those two values. And afterwards, I just went over to the render settings because I still was in pre-computed plot shadows, and I want to render in full GI using the full power of VRED, also indirect lights and stuff. So that's basically what I did until this point. Just for you to have like an overview over my render settings, I'm using 1024 image samples at the moment. Basically, I like tried a lot to find out like which is the perfect settings for this scene. So basic camera just to recreate the perspective and stuff because I already rendered the picture to save some time. So I will just double click it. Basically the only thing is defining the perspective, and then I put in a roll, which is basically just like rotating the image around one axis to make it a little bit more dynamic. So you can see nothing. .3D applications, like the size of me, we have a lot of presets. You can the mode, which is full GI in my case, have HDR functionality, or alpha. You can like reload a lot of data. As you can see your picture without some, for example, camera perspectives or something. So I will just check all to use that feature. Now let's just talk a few minutes or seconds about the render passes. As you can see, we have a lot of passes available. I just checked some of for rendering. Very powerful, really cool. Cool is that you can like use the real time. So this viewport and this is pure VRED effects, the vignette, and I've rendered another perspective for this picture. So also this one, which is just from another angle, using the same render settings, same camera settings. I just moved the camera. So that's basically the way to produce an image in VRED. And let's just say, let's just take a look at the passes too. So just as an example, 2 passes rendered out with this picture automatically by just checking the boxes. That's a normal pass and an occlusion pass. Okay, so let me close this and just go back one step. So in case I want to re-render parts, or I want to separate my image inside of VRED, you could just use the layer, the render layer module. So I will just open it, create 2 layers. I will do a very basic example. So I will create 2 layers. One layer I will apply the whole car, which is basically a child of this node. That's why I took the root node. And the environment. So basically the whole scene, and I will make it invisible in alpha. And then I'm going to take the body parts, which are these 2 guys, and just attach it to the render layer 2. And by activating them one after another, you can see that first everything is disappearing, the whole scene, as I defined it in the first layer. And by activating the second layer, you can see that there is an alpha, and I could just render this part from every angle, and the other parts are separated, subtracted from the picture. So as you can see here would be the real. So you could just edit very, in a very simple way to your composition in post-production. So as I said, it's just a very basic example for this. Of course, as you can see, you have a lot of other attributes that can be switched off and on there. I would just reset it again. You could define things like primary visibility, the visibility in reflections, or if an object should cast shadows or not. This is a very powerful module, especially for high-end image production. If you want to use an additional program for post-processing, then you can divide your rendering in several parts using this editor. So I will just reset it and close it again. And I've just prepared another short example that I wanted to show you, which is something completely different. And I will just use the variant set functionality within VRED to switch between those 2 settings. So as you can see, we are at the moment in this kind of Pacific road or something. and just rendering a realistic motion blur picture. Actually, I have prepared a complete different setup. Just open the variant set. Just to explain it very briefly, a lot of states of the scene are saved within those variant sets. So I can switch between scene setups by just double-clicking on those variant sets. So as you can see, I defined the lights that should turn on or off, material switches and stuff like this. So I will switch to the studio setup because actually the motion blur setup is finished. And I will tell you the differences, but just we didn't have the time to start from zero with this studio setup. So as you can see, I have to fix some stuff to get this working. So I will just apply the HDR to the shaders. Camera should be right in this point. I will just zoom out for you to just see the set a little bit. Basically, it should simulate. Let me just make the light visible. So this is basically a setup like a virtual photographer studio or something. I basically just switched off the IBL, so there is no image-based lighting in the scene. I just used a spotlight converted to area light, which is a feature of VRED. You can decide between 3 shapes. So I just took the rectangle and put it behind the car, made it visible in reflections. So let me just give you a small overview over the lights. We have spotlight, directional light, and point light, as you know from different softwares or other softwares. You have several ways to set it up. Let me just show you, or it should work, that we have the scene will respond in real time. So we have real-time shadows casted by the light or by the object lit with this light. So you can define a lot of stuff. Just to shorten it, I just basically created it, increased the intensity just slightly to 5, and then enabled the area light, which is producing very good results in ray tracing, and also because I want to have the reflection on the car. So I will basically double check if all the settings are made right. So I will make it invisible again. So just to be able to render a whole black background. So what I want to do, you will immediately see what the purpose was. So I will close this, but keep it visible in reflections. That's why I have this white reflections on the car. And I will get back to the camera settings that I used for this. So this looks quite cool if it's rendered finished. So I will just, as I did.
Sorry, Lucas, just to interrupt. We lost you there for about 30 seconds. So if you could just rewind, hopefully that'll be the last time we have any issues with the sound. But yeah, if you could just go back 30 seconds or a minute. Thank you.
Okay, so I will try to get back or go back. So basically what I explained is that I've created a light behind this car, just using it for reflection. Everything else, there is no other light in the scene, so you will just see the reflections on the car, which is basically glossy reflections, and also a lot of stuff in front of the car is chrome, which is reflecting like 100% of the light. So yeah, that's basically it. Just to explain it, I switch off the primary visibility, but the effect of this light will remain in the scene. So just turn that off, and I will go back to my camera view and all that stuff. So just double click on the variant set, which I predefined. So if you have like specific questions to the setup, of course I didn't explain everything I used for these pictures because we don't have the time, then do not hesitate to ask them afterwards in the Q&A session. So for example, what exactly is inside of this variant set or whatever, if you missed something because of the technical problems or something. And if I start rendering now, you will see that there is a reflective plane below the car, which is also like just producing glossy reflections, and the car, like you can see the silhouette and stuff, which is a very reduced rendering, just in like to have the opposite of the photorealistic picture that we did in the first part. So basically, I will just show you the result. I hope it will. Yes, that's the right one. So now you should be, let me just switch off the sampling process there and go back to the right picture. So this will be the final result after, let's say, 10 minutes. So as you can see, the engine is reflecting a lot of light. Looks quite cool, very reduced. So this is basically the diffuse channel. I just rendered out some additional passes. That's the glossy light channel, and as you can see, there is a lot of glossy reflection, as I mentioned it on the car, like defining the shape and a normal pass and a mask in this case. So this would be it. Just to mention something else, and this will be the last thing I want to show in this webinar, is if you want to render this out without or in a batch process. So if you just want to start some renderings in VRED and then leave your office and come back after everything is finished, you can use the sequencer. What I basically did, I have defined two sequences which are called according to the pictures or whatever you are doing. And then I just loaded the variant set, which is basically bringing or activating the setup inside of VRED. And then you just have to add another command, which is called create snapshot. That's the command for rendering out pictures offline. So you can basically define all that stuff that I showed to you in the render settings in this area. In here, just put in the values and true or false if you want to check or uncheck something there. And then basically you could activate all your commands, click to the first one, and just start run all sequences, and VRED will automatically start rendering. So I will just switch off those render commands because I don't want to start the rendering at the moment, but just to show you first, okay, that's quite fast, so I will do it one by one. If I activate the motion blur, we will just go to this setup and then start rendering, and after finishing this process, he will go to the studio setup and then start rendering. So basically you can define a lot of sequences there and just start the batch process to calculate a lot of different pictures inside of VRED. Of course, you can define all the render settings in there too. So let me just give you a quick. You could also create a node that is, or a command that is defining your render setting, render passes. So as you can see, there is a lot of stuff to set up within this module. Yeah, that's basically used for batch rendering processes, but of course we can use it to automate a lot of stuff within VRED. So that's basically it for my presentation. I hope you liked it. So as we mentioned a lot of times, if you want to ask something, then just feel free to ask your questions. It was a pleasure for me to present this webinar to you, and I hope although we had some technical problems, it was quite interesting for you to listen to it. So thank you so far.
Great. Thanks very much, Lucas. That's great. We've got a couple of questions kicking off here. The first one is from Antonio Bertolucci, who's asking, what are the most significant differences in the high-end static image production in comparison with 3ds Max Design and Maya?
So I would just, I would say the most significant thing, or let me just to state the first thing, VRED is the fastest ray tracing engine, CPU-based ray tracing engine on the market. So this is one thing that's quite good for your production process. But what was always the most helpful thing to me is that VRED is it is real time. So actually, I think within my presentation it was not too obvious, but you can see your shadows in real time, reflections in real time, and it's not based on OpenGL, it is real-time ray tracing. So for setting up a scene and preparing your rendering and stuff like this, the real-time functionality, or the fact that VRED is rendering in real time, or you can see a feedback immediately, it's very, very powerful, refraction, reflection, all the light stuff, setting up a light, displacement. I think the list is long, so this is, I think, the most powerful thing about VRED. And what I should mention too, that VRED is able to cope with very high amounts of polygons. So compared to Maya, or it's hard to compare it to Maya because it is VRED is able to cope with way more polygons than Maya. So yeah. I guess for the production of the images, VRED is giving you a lot of advantages compared to Maya and Max, but of course it's not that complex. So there is different application areas for those programs. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Okay, the next question is first of all, actually, this is from Eric Garcia. I wanted to congratulate everyone on the VRED team for the amazing rendering engine. The question is whether there are plans to implement some kind of GPU acceleration, and the other one is if you can get a real animated output with distributed rendering with different computers calculating one single frame.
So basically, a GPU acceleration, I didn't get the question, I guess. So I did mention, because that's kind of confusing, but I did mention we also have an OpenGL mode, which is based on the GPU, of course, but I didn't use it because it's more for real-time presentation than for high-end image production, as you can imagine. And the second question was, could you please repeat it?
Sorry, yes, the second question was whether you could get a real animated output with distributed rendering with different computers calculating one single frame.
So you could get an animated output, like a sequence of images or something. That's not a problem. And you could use the cluster rendering functionality for this. So basically, the several PCs are sharing the workload to render the pictures for the animation. So yeah, I think if I got it right, I think the answer would be yes. You can.
Another one, this is from Chris Carden, who's a fairly simple one. What sort of improvement can we expect with VRED and a Maximus or K5000 graphics card?
What kind of improvement can we?
Yeah, what kind of improvement can you expect with VRED and a Maximus or K5000 graphics card?
Okay, so basically I didn't use my graphic card for the whole like presentation. This was completely calculated on the CPU. So the graphic card was just responsible for showing the picture within Windows. Actually, I cannot tell you too much about this specific question. Yeah. So if you have like questions like these, you could forward it, or you could send it to me, and I will forward it to the responsible person giving, or to be able to provide you a good answer for this.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it'd be very, as he says, Lucas, very happy to forward any particularly technical questions of that kind. Another one from Ricardo Casillas is: do you think that Autodesk Showcase could include some of the features from VRED, like motion and radial blur?
Actually, I like cannot tell you something about that. So if you have questions like this, also I have to forward it to the responsible person.
Okay, got one here. Okay, it says, this is from Guillaume Vazer. Says, I've seen that this environment format is not HDR, but a specific format. What are the differences? Is this because VRED needs a different behavior for the scene?
No, actually it was an MTD file that I have imported. So first of all, I think you paid attention very well, because this was quite not too obvious. So it is MTD. That's just because of the reason I have imported that HDR into VRED, and VRED is like storing all the textures internally. It's not referencing. So I basically imported an HDR into VRED and then exported that file again, saving it as MTD. So yeah, basically that's the reason why it's not an HDR, and of course you can use HDRs, EXRs, all the pictures that are like have a high dynamic range to be used as for IBL, for image-based lighting.
Another quick one here, just asking Johnny Giles, can you import alias CAD designs into VRED? Thanks.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that is a quick one.
And the workflow or the connection between those two programs will be even improved in the future. So
I've got a couple of questions here relating to the kind of more on the hardware as well. This is Chris Carden asking about understanding the best hardware for VRED. What CPU is needed for optimal performance?
So VRED is supporting two physical CPUs. Should be Intel. It is like optimized, or optimized for Intel hardware. Basically, the higher the better, but you can find the requirements and some other information on our homepage, pi-vr.de, and then just to VRED Pro, and there is a sheet where you can find all the tested hardware and low setup and to high-end setup.
Okay, we got another one here, which is this is Alexandru Nicolai, which is asking if you could explain more about the cluster function. What is the workflow, to be more precise? I just connect two PCs and VRED pops up in a wizard to follow.
So yeah, it's not that easy, but it's not too hard. So actually, you just have to install a specific software on your slave PC, and you need to have one VRED Pro on the master machine. And then you can just type in the IPs of those slave machines. They just have to be in the same network. And yeah, then basically you would start the cluster process, and VRED would automatically divide the picture into small mosaics, and like every slave is calculating its part. So it is not like you don't have to do too much to set this up. It is just installing the package on the slave, putting in the IP, and yeah, hitting the functionality and start rendering. So it's not like setting up a render farm or something, not too complex. And of course you can, if you have like several PCs in an office or some other like configuration in your yeah, you could just you just can connect them, and your the slave is still able to prioritize the process, and he can still work during you are using his CPU to calculate your image.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions from Marcelo Fanta asking if you can have a different control for a bump and a displacement on the same material, and also if you can use the GPU to render.
So yes and yes. We have in most materials there is a displacement slot and a bump slot, and you can put in like textures there to get this the effect. Actually, you are just, as I said, VRED is just using the GPU in OpenGL mode. So you could render also in OpenGL, that's no problem. You have all the camera settings that I showed to you during the presentation, like motion blur and depth of field, is also available in OpenGL. So of course you can use it, yeah, for the OpenGL mode, not for ray tracing.
We got one from Guillaume Vasseur is saying the software is really impressive for static pictures. Obviously very impressed with the demonstration. User-friendly to make post-production, which I think you've shown today. He's saying he still has difficulties considering the limits on animation. Is it possible to render complete moving scenes coming from Max or Maya?
Yes, it is. So I just focused on still pictures today because actually, as you can see, it was like very short time, but we have rendered some animated movies as well. I personally did a movie like combining CGI stuff rendered in VRED with real footage. So yeah, you are able to, and it's not so. You basically can like provide or prepare your animations within Max and Maya and then import them into VRED, which is the best way to get a complex animation because the animation modules of Max and Maya are way more like complex than the one in VRED because it is not made or not primarily made for animation, of course. But yes, to answer your question, you can like start all that stuff in Maya, prepare it to a level, and then render it in VRED without problems. You can even import vertex animations, as I said.
Another one actually. Oops, sorry.
In addition, use the FBX format to exchange those animations, and that's it.
Actually, this is just a follow-on from Guillaume. Oh, okay, actually, no, I think it's been he's been answered already. We'll move on. This is from Jex Chow, who's saying another question: can we import materials like VRED materials or other material settings into VRED?
Not at this point. So, not yet.
Okay. We've also got, this is just another sort of fairly technical one on the demonstration you were doing from Henry Gockel, asking how you position the glare on the headlamps.
The glare is actually like VRED is evaluating the brightness of the pixel, and then you got a threshold to define which pixel should be taken into account for this effect, and then that's basically it. So he's just evaluating where the very bright pixels are, and then he's applying this effect according to a threshold value that you are setting up inside of the camera settings. So you are not able to like take the mouse and put a point somewhere to add this glare. It is based on the brightness of the pixels.
This one is, again, quite a sort of technical one. Just actually to say at this point, for example, the question that David Ferrari asked, if you any questions you send to us now, we will actually pass on to Lucas, and he can then forward them to the relevant person within Autodesk. So now's your chance. If there's anything very specific on what you're doing, we will make sure those questions get through to the right people. In the meantime, yeah, just as I say, another technical one, which may be something you'll need to pass on internally, was how to create an environment in VRED. He's saying that it's working, and then when he adds an environment and imports stuff to protect, sorry, the project, and clicks Add Skydome Environment, when he tries to create that in manual, it's not working. Maybe you can shed some light, or maybe just pass that on.
So basically, the only thing, like we have this set up with the ground plane and the skydome, or the geometry, that you can find it in an example folder inside of the VRED installation folder. So, and then you just have to import this one. Of course, you can also use your own geometry to project something on using the sphere environment material. If I got the question wrong, of course, just I will forward it to the right person. But I think this is the answer to your question. So just import it from the examples folder within the Autodesk or the VRED installation folder.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Lucas, very, very much. That was fascinating. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope you found this webinar stimulating and informative. Please remember, this webinar will soon be added, I think, tomorrow. You should be able to access this in our online archive, basically be available to anyone who wishes to view it. You can find this and all our previous webinars under the Process tab on the Car Design News homepage. So all remains is just to thank you again and to say don't forget to join us on the 24th of July for our next Autodesk webinar, Creative Sketching with Sketchbook Pro.